Generations of home bakers have known the secret. You can achieve an exceptionally moist and dense yet light and fluffy cake by adding instant pudding powder to your batter. I'm going to give you a recipe for just such a cake, and we're going to learn the science of how and why this works so well. Also, if you don't want to put a box of instant pudding in your cake, I'm going to show you a DIY method for achieving the exact same effect. So we were just up in the Tennessee foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains, visiting my mother-in-law, Gretchen. This is her signature cake. She got it from her mother, who got it from a neighbor lady named Hattie.
So we've always called it Hattie's cake, and a 75-year-old woman in my Sunday school class tasted it and said she calls this the better than sex chocolate cake. So I think that kind of describes it.
Now sneer all you want, but this starts with a 15-ounce box of yellow cake mix. Damn good stuff. Then comes the 6-ounce box of instant chocolate pudding powder. It's important that it be instant. I'll show you why in a minute. Then come 3 eggs, an 8-ounce tub of sour cream, 3/4 of a cup of water, 2/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, and a teaspoon of vanilla. Beat it up until nice and smooth. Oh, look at that. It looks puddingy, doesn't it? Mix in a cup of chocolate chips, and it's time to put this into a bundt pan. And here is another secret ingredient.
Baker's Joy.
Non-stick spray with flour inside it.
That's what you spray on the pan so that it doesn't stick, and it really is kind of a miracle.
Bake at 350 Fahrenheit for 50 to 55 minutes. You'll know it's done when the edges start to brown and pull away from the sides, and a knife or a skewer or something to the center comes out clean. Let it cool for a few minutes before turning it out onto a plate, and here's when we'll find out if it's stuck.
So cross your fingers. Perfection.
Now what I love about this cake is its texture. Look at how kind of jiggly it is. It kind of moves like pudding. It's gelatinous, hence Jell-O. Now I think that I can bake a cake this moist and dense without pudding powder in it, but it wouldn't be as soft and it wouldn't be as light in the sense of there would be a lot more fat in it. Furthermore, this stays soft and moist for days after baking, if it lasts that long. Why is that? Well, let's wrap up a piece and take it over to Dr. Curtis Luckett, a food scientist at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He says the secret here appears to be the second ingredient listed on the pudding box after sugar, modified cornstarch.
The modified starch of instant pudding is going to have a higher water binding capacity. Basically, they've modified the starch enzymatically, physically, or even chemically to better interact with water molecules. So maybe in this cake, they're binding to the water molecules, helping create a more moist, a more dense cake.
If you have any regular cornstarch in your kitchen, you can see this water binding capacity for yourself right now. Just whisk it into some water and bring it to a boil. The starch molecules, which are normally in tight little grains, will open up and form what Dr. Luckett would call a matrix. That's a structural web that holds water inside it in a gel. Now, how is this different from the modified stuff in the pudding box?
This is probably a pre-gelled starch. To disrupt that granular structure, you often need to cook in the presence of water to get the amylose, amylopectin, the 2 actual macromolecules that make up starch, to leach out into solution and start forming the food matrix.
But in the case of this modified stuff, you don't have to cook it. You can mix it right into cold liquid and it gels. The manufacturers have busted up the starch granules in advance, with enzymes, with chemicals, maybe even just by boiling it in water and then drying it out again. And look, this, in effect, is what is in your cake, holding more water and fat than a cake can normally hold without collapsing. Dr. Luckett figures another way the pudding starch has been modified is to prevent the amylose and amylopectin from bunching back together into a hard structure. This is a process known as reassociation that leads to a result called retrogradation.
That's the primary mechanism of staling. So when bread stales, it's because those starch molecules have migrated close to each other and started to reassociate, and it kind of pushes water out in that process called retrogradation.
This is why Hattie's cake stays moist and soft for days after you bake it. And there you go, all the reasons why instant pudding powder is magic inside cakes. Now, some people might be freaked out by the idea of adding a processed food to their cake. For what it's worth, Dr. Luckett has little kids like I do, and I asked him, anything in that ingredient list that you'd pause before giving to your kids?
None.
And get this, you don't even have to use instant pudding powder if you don't want to. I mean, it's got sugar and flavorings and stuff that you might not want or need in your cake. You can buy unflavored, pre-gelatinized starch on the internet. How much should you use? According to this 2001 study out of Turkey, the magic number is 10%. Replace 10% of the flour in your recipe by weight with pre-gelatinized starch. Any more than 10% they found makes the batter too thin. It can't trap gas when it bakes, and you get this flat, overly dense cake. But yeah, replace 10% of the flour in your recipe with this magic powder, and Bob's your uncle, as the Brits would say. Or you could just buy the boxes and make Hattie's cake. It's a family tradition for a reason.